Hey up and welcome to the Temple of Blair. This is a conversation with Dino Cazares from Fear Factory. After an extended quiet period owing to the pandemic and various other events which we'll get into, Fear Factory are releasing their new single, Disruptor, from their upcoming album Aggression Continuum, this Friday, April 16th, 2021. So here we marry up the history of the band and its link to Roadrunner Records, including some of the turbulence that the band has endured in more recent years. Now, Dino is incredibly articulate, and as such, I really thank him for offering his unique perspective on his relationship with Roadrunner. And for the same reason, there's a lot of me paraphrasing and generalising certain events just to sort of support the conversation, to which Dino quite rightly steers me towards understanding the full context. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a few moments in this conversation of me looking like a proper knobhead, but, you know, I'm quite happy to look dumb in front of certain people in the interest of me learning something, right? But, you know, if there's anyone that I'm happy to receive an education from, it's Dino fucking Cazares. It's a very reasonable trade-off. So, enjoy this one. 1, 2, fuck shit up.
How's everything going? Everything good?
Dude, everything's cool, man. It's just been fucking hectic. I'm sure, I'm in no position to say that to you, but it has been very hectic.
Well, it's been very hectic for me too, because, you know, we're about to drop a single coming up on Friday.
Yeah, man. It's been, how does it feel like going out of like the last few years of, kind of admin overheads, and now you're sort of like, you're at the runway now and you're about to hit the cycle. Does it feel really fucking relieving?
Very, very relieving. It's going to feel even better once we can get out there and tour.
Fuck yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Because we're used to, you know, I'm used to putting a record out, you know, single, being on the road, you know, to promote the album, you know, and right now it's kind of like, okay, we got a record coming out. It's exciting, but then there's not that going on the road aspect. You know what I mean? So, but I'm excited as I possibly could get.
Yeah, it's a weird cycle this time round, but maybe it's just because I'm getting old, but like the idea of having as much sort of admin overhead as you've had the last 2 years, and just had that sort of like lifted off over the last 6 months or so, you know, all the you know, the certain matters that have been resolved, which I won't dwell on. It must be like such a weight on the shoulders, dude. Fuck, man.
I mean, obviously, you know, there's been a lot of hurdles that I've had to leap over just to get to here. You know what I mean? And it is like, you know, a weight's been lifted off my shoulder to finally get it out. And it's been 5+ years, not a full 6 years, but it's been about 5.5 years since there hasn't been any new music from the band Fear Factory.
Yeah.
So just to finally get it out, it's extremely exciting. It's a weight lifted off my shoulders, and people can finally hear the record. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, right now the single, but, you know, eventually you're going to be able to hear the record within a few months. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there a date yet for the new album? I don't know if it's been out yet. It doesn't release the information. So
the dates and everything will be released this Friday.
Perfect.
All the information will believe. Yeah, it's going to be released this Friday. You're going to be able to go to fearfactory.com to do all the pre-orders, you know, all the vinyls and the cassettes and the CDs, yeah, and the T-shirt bundles and all that stuff, all the different color of vinyls. There's going to be plenty of them. You know what I mean? And it's cool. It's cool to finally get it out. You're going to be able to go to fearfactory.com for all that stuff.
Cool. I like the selection of reissue vinyls as well, because it feels like, and maybe it's just been the time it's been. It feels like a reboot. It's completely a breath of fresh air. Everything's happening in a completely different new flavor. It's going to be you're going to be so productive because you're an incredibly productive person. And to see sort of like the shackles be taken off you, I'm just excited to see that ball rolling at the speed it's going to.
Yes, and that was one of the good things about the COVID. I call it the COVID year, right?
Yeah.
Or the COVID years. But that was one of the good things about, you know, that was that we were able to catch up on some stuff. In other words, you know, we're re-releasing demanufacture on vinyl for the first time ever in North America. Wow. You guys had it out there in the UK. You guys had it out there in Europe. But we never had it out here in North America. So we're re-releasing the vinyl here with also some live bonus tracks from Ozfest 1996. So it's going to be a 3 vinyl. It's going to be 3 vinyls. The two vinyls will be the album. Then the third vinyl will be the live tracks. And it's great because you can really hear the band was on fire. 1996, demanufacture era, the band was just on fire. You can hear it in the live recordings. We didn't do very many touch-ups at all. We wanted to keep it as authentic as possible. And yeah, I can't wait for people to hear it. So that, then also the record that we did in 2012, that came out 2012, was called The Industrialist.
Yeah.
Now on that record, we didn't have a drummer, so we ended up using the drum program. So when that record first came out, a lot of our fans were disappointed that we didn't have a drummer, and we used the drum program. So now I had the opportunity and the time to go back and have our drummer, Mike Heller, who's been with us for the past 10 years, I had him go and retrack all the live drums for that record.
Oh, awesome.
So now we're going to re-release that, on vinyl and everything. And it's going to be called Reindustrialized.
It's kind of an inverted theme, isn't it? Because Fear Factory is all about industrialization, and you're retrofitting like an actual human element to it. It's
so weird. Like, we've been thinking about technology the whole time, and the minute we use technology, we got backlash from it. So it was kind of weird. So, but it was cool that we got to do that. It definitely gave the album a fucking different feel, and it sounded really good, and we're really happy with it. And I can't wait for people to hear it. We added a few different things per song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like different rolls, different fills, things like that. Added a couple of different notes here and there, just to spice it up a little bit. Sure.
Yeah. I think the next, I guess, is the new singer going to be revealed at any point, or is that still outstanding?
I'm holding off on that.
Okay.
I want to focus on the album, get the album out, get all that stuff out, and then everything else will come soon.
I think I saw on Twitter that I think you're after an unknown or something. I'm very excited for the prospects.
Well, it's not that I'm after an unknown. I'm saying I would give an unknown a shot.
Cool, right?
You know what I mean? And I also said gender does not play a factor in my decision at all. So if it's a female, male, whatever, if they can handle the position, they can handle the job.
Yep.
I would be more than willing to hire them. But at the same time, there's a lot of things to consider. Now, if you hire an unknown who doesn't have any experience as far as touring or nothing like that, that could be not exactly great because, they haven't been on the road. They haven't tested their voice, singing months and months, at a time. So there's, obviously there's experience that's involved, right?
Yeah.
So we would want somebody who would have some sort of experience.
I think it's exciting though, because if you look at like Fear Factory as how it elevated the genre, I think there's kind of like two camps. There's the instrumentation. What's the word? Instrumentation. There we go. There's that stuff which was you basically taking death metal kind of aesthetics and making it a lot more accessible and giving it a different vibe, and then working with Reese to sort of really bring it into a different era. And then there's stuff which Burton contributed, the gruff to clean and everything around that. Since like in the last 30 years, no one's topped Fear Factory in terms of that instrumentation. In fact, I think that kind of guitar playing has been pushed further out to the fringe. So I think Fear Factory is still like the cutting edge in that regard. But on the vocal side, we've had, obviously since let's say the early 90s, we've had like grunge, we've had post-hardcore, we've had metalcore, we've had all these things happen, and it's kind of developed in isolation of Fear Factory. So I think when we come round to the new singer, it's going to be such an interesting injection of new flavor, which I think is really, I think like the ground in terms of the vocals is so fertile for development. And I think it's going to be really fucking cool, I think.
Well, the weird thing about it is that if we get a male vocalist, right, he's going to get compared to Burton left and right.
Sure.
He's going to be like, he better sound like Burton. He better be identical Burton. You know what I mean? He's just going to he's got a lot of shoes to fill, right? Big shoes to fill. So, but if we get a female, there won't be no comparisons to Burton. You can't compare a female to that.
Yeah.
So, but if a female can sing all that stuff, in her style and the way she does it, and stay true to the legacy that we've made for the past 30 years. And she could bring a whole new life to the band.
Exactly.
So I'm leaning either way. I'm for whoever can handle the position, and anybody that who obviously we're going to have to get them in a room, bash it out, rehearse, see how they hold up live, see how they hold up in a band element, and to see if we like them as a person.
Yeah. Totally. That's the most important thing.
I mean, I've made mistakes in the past. You know what I mean? My other band, Divine Heresy, I basically discovered an unknown, and it turned out to be a nightmare. You know what I mean? So, but we don't need to mention any names. But yeah, I also found some other unknowns. Travis Neal, who was also in Divine Heresy as well. So there's a lot of guys that are out there that are very talented, and a lot of people in general. And I just want to give whoever is the right person the shot.
Yeah. And that's the priority. And I think you're going to do fucking brilliant at it. I think it's just such a good opportunity to elevate the genre further on that vocal side. And I think that's the exciting bit for me as a fan.
Exactly. And, a lot of the fans have made suggestions, of course. But a lot of, it's just, like, oh, why don't you get Devin Townsend to sing? I'm like, well, Devin Townsend has his own band. And he wouldn't have time and a commitment for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, I mean, obviously, those are like, it's like, what do they call it? Fantasy camp, where you like go on and you make up your fake football team or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You pick the bass players, and that's kind of like what these people are doing with the band. It's like fantasy camp.
Hey, that's fun. It's all a good fun,
it's fun.
I guess. For the time being. But hey, man, priorities. Get the album out, get the album cycle on the go, and then we can worry about that shit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, by way of some sort of late introduction, I'm Jim, and this is the Temple of Bleh. And the idea behind the Temple of Bleh is we like to promote, obviously, music. We also like to. I've got a project going on at the minute, which is what led me to you, which was the history of Roadrunner Records. Are you all right talking about that particular rabbit hole?
Whatever you want to talk about, I'm ready.
Fucking A. I'll start with some signposting, because there's been some cracking interviews with yourself over the past 6 months. Two, which I'll point people towards, which is No Fucking Regrets podcast with Rob Flynn. You did a 3-hour mammoth job on that one, and that covers like everything from you crawling out of the womb to where you are today.
Yeah.
Then there's the Meet podcast, which is I call him my compadre, Ryan Rainbow, who's dealing with like album by album the history of Roadrunners from about 94, I believe. So you feature on 2 episodes of that, which is one from Demanufacture, one for the first Brujeria record, which I can't remember the name.
Brujeria Matando Güeros.
Yeah, I mean, my northern
slang. No, I think it was Raza Odiada. I think it was Raza Odiada, which is the one. I think that's the one we talked about.
Right.
The second record.
Oh, okay. Was it? It must have been 95, 96.
95 okay. As well. Same year as Demanufacture.
Okay, cool. Are you on any more meets? Has Ryan got you cornered for any more?
No, that's just the 2 for right now.
Okay. He'll probably swing back around when Obsolete comes around and things like that, I imagine.
Yeah, well, actually, Digimortal's coming up on the 24th. April 24th will be 20 years.
Fuck, man. Jesus.
Exactly. We're getting old. Yep.
That was like the dive bar in my hometown of Halifax, UK, the real Halifax. It was called the Cooler, and it was the metal pub, and they had Lynchpin on every fucking night. Every time I walked in, that was just.
It's funny you say that. That's our biggest and most downloaded, streamed song.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
it's a big song.
Yeah, it's a big track. It just has that beat, that feel. Everybody can dance to it, groove to it, headbang to it.
Yeah,
all the above. And it's just when we did play it, it was we played it in the festival. And the minute we hit that riff, and the kick drums coming in, you just see everybody getting excited and starting jumping around. So
yeah, it's pretty much paced perfectly for that kind of anthemic, that party vibe. It's the closest thing Fear Factory's got to Andrew WK in terms of party metal.
Yeah, well, we kind of learned that. We kind of learned along the way what works at festivals.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Soul Vending Machine, that record, most of it was pretty fast. You know what I mean? But you did have groovy tracks like Scum Grief and Scapegoat and stuff like that. But most of it was pretty fast. And we realized, like, when you're playing fast songs like that, sometimes it doesn't always translate well at a festival, right? It's just the way the music carries. But when you play slow, groovier tracks, Edge Crusher, Linchpin, that stuff just really translates well live, and people just love it.
Yeah, awesome, man. It's 20 fucking years. That's insane. Anyway, instead of thinking about 20 years, let's think back 30 years.
Okay.
So, it's interesting the Rob Flynn interview, because you talk about it seems like there's not a lot of people on the planet who go to LA with the sole express intention of being a metal rock star. But you seem to have you just got off the bus, someone screamed, "You're in the jungle, Dave," and you went, "Fuck off, I'm just going to start looking for bands and stuff like that." So when you start shopping around what would become Fear Factory to various labels, you mentioned that Roadrunner was the one that got it, and obviously that's Monty. That's Monty doing his thing. Monty Connor, A&R, Svengali.
Yeah.
What other conversations were happening at the time? I think you mentioned Metal Blade. Was there anyone else that you kind of tried to get a vibe with and it just didn't work?
No, no one just got the vocals. No one got the vocals. They were like, "What is this?" Because you got to realize in 1990 it was probably the peak of death metal and grindcore and all that extreme music, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of fit in there, but we had different elements to the band. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the vocals, one of them, the electronic elements, and just stuff that maybe people really didn't hear a combination of, you know what I mean? Yeah. So they just turned us down. They were saying, "Oh, this is not necessarily fit for the label." Mm-hmm. Things like that. "Oh, good job, Dino, but this is not what we're into." Things like that. Because I knew a lot of people who worked at these record companies already, because we were, I had a one-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, and in that one-bedroom apartment, we were just a part of the scene. So we went out, we met all the bands, we went to all the concerts. We always said, "Hey, after the gig, why don't you guys come over and party at my house?" So we were inviting every band that came through Hollywood to our apartment, and we were having a party. And of course, people, it grew and people found out, and it traveled all the way to the UK and to Europe and everywhere else. "Hey, let's go to Dino's Pad. Oh, we're playing Hollywood. Shit, can't wait to go to Dino's Pad." Right. And then it was like, we started meeting people from the record company. So we started becoming friends with them. So boom, by the time we had Fear Factory, all I had to do was call people up, say, "Hey man, I got a demo. We check it out. Yeah, come over, we'll have lunch." That kind of stuff. And so it was kind of cool in that way, but it wasn't cool when everybody turned you down.
Yeah.
Now, Monty Connor first kind of, in our early demo, Monty heard our early demo before the Ross Robinson album. He heard our early demo, and he's like, a little too gothish, but keep me updated. Right?
And for those who haven't heard Monty speak, that's an immaculate impression.
So anyways, it wasn't until Max was the one that kind of opened Monty's eyes a little bit. We did the Ross Robinson album, but I think everybody knows about that story, that we did an album that didn't come out because it didn't work out legally, right? Mm-hmm. So we used that album to shop around. I played it. I met Max at a music convention here in Los Angeles in 1991. I played him the demo, and he fell in love with it. He had a little Walkman with headphones in his hotel room. Played it for him. Fell in love with it. He goes, "Oh, this is so killer. This is killer. I have to tell Monty Connor, about this demo." And I was like, and he goes, "Oh, thank you. I keep it." I'm like, "No, you can't keep it. Yeah, it's my only copy." So I ended up wrestling him for it on the hotel bed. I tackled him, and I got the Walkman, and I was able to get the tape back. Right. And I go, "Look, I'll make you a copy, but I can't. This is my master copy." And the rest is history. Max told Monty, "You got to check it out." So Monty's like, "Hey, Dino, you got to let me check out the new demo." And so I played it for him, and he instantly got it. He's like, "This is it." this is different. I got to get it.
The thing I'm trying to also get my head around is like, where's Roadrunner at this point? Because you mentioned it yourself, it's at the height of the death and the thrash thing. But at the same time, the label themselves are starting to move out of that world. They're starting to look in a more contemporary place. Obviously, that's where the Reese Fulber connection comes from, because they just acquired Third Mind. And there was a few other bands that were making the roster, which again were a little bit more grungy, a little bit more alternative. So I bet when Monty saw it, and maybe he'll email me after this and go, "You're full of shit. Stop peddling your fucking lies." He might have thought, okay, not only does this elevate the genre, but the way everything is in the United States, Roadrunner it was a force to be reckoned with, but the bands they had, like the Sepulturas and the Obituaries, they were bigger in Europe than they were in the United States. So the label's probably really keen to get something which is totally unique and really breaks that market. So when we see the binding of the particular sound, which ended up being sort of the New Machine, and he sees the elevation of the genre, he's probably fucking chomping at the bit to get you. With regards to that, do you recall the deal at the time? Do you remember the terms that Case was putting on the table at the time?
Yeah, that we fucking gave up everything.
Yeah.
That was the terms. I mean, it was really bad. It was really bad record deal. But it was really cool because by the time after demanufacture, we were able to negotiate our deal and get a better deal by the time Obsolete came out. But the deal was really bad. It was kind of like what they call a 360 deal. You know, they owned your publishing. You had to sign with their publishing company, right? You also had to sign with their merchandising company, which is Blue Grape.
Blue Grape, yep.
Yeah, and you had to sign and then the record deal. So it's the record deal, the publishing deal, and then the merch deal, right? Yeah. So they had their hand in everything, and we were just really broke, starving musicians. We didn't make a lot of money at all. As a matter of fact, we barely scrounged around, and we all still had jobs at some point during the first record. It wasn't until demanufacture that we actually were actually making enough for rent.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I can't say a living. Because of course we lived, but we were barely making enough money for rent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though demanufacture is considered the fan favorite and people think it's bigger than what it is. But it wasn't until Obsolete where things changed.
Obsolete was the gold. Demanufactured it's interesting, but demanufactured is kind of revered as where the sound found its form. And I think that's because metalheads are less driven by numbers and more driven by authenticity. That's like their milestone, I think. I don't know, I can't speak for all fans. But yeah, those 360 deals were fucking brutal. But I think
very brutal. Brutal.
Maybe I'm shilling for
Let me tell you this story. Before. I'm not sure if I told anybody else's story recently or not, but there was a record company called Interscope Records. You might have heard of them. They had Dr. Dre, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, right? Jimmy Iovine owned the company. There was a guy who worked for the record company called Ray Santamaria. Ray heard the minute, actually he was there when we were mixing Demanufacture. He was actually in the studio with us. He was a good friend of ours. So he recently had got a job from Interscope Records. He was listening to the record as we were mixing, and he was like, holy fuck, I got to tell Jimmy Iovine about this record. So we told Jimmy Iovine, and he got us a meeting with Jimmy Iovine. So we actually met with Jimmy Iovine, went into the room, and he loved the band. He loved it. He was into it, right? So we're like, fuck, how are we going to get off Roadrunner? And Jimmy was like, well, I'll buy your fucking contract. I'll buy your contract, right? He offered Case Wessels $1 million. Case said no. He turned it down. And we were mad for a while because we thought Interscope would have been, I think Interscope might have broken the band at the time. You got to realize, Roadrunner was doing very well. But they had, I think at that time, by 94, 95, I'm not sure if they had broken a band yet. Because Sepultura hadn't gone gold yet. Type of Negative hasn't gone gold yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think Type of Negative gold was about, I think it was mid-95.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So, and, we were like, we had an opportunity and we were like, fuck. So, obviously Case wouldn't even negotiate. You know what I mean? So that kind of went goodbye. And so we were kind of mad for a minute at Roadrunner, but then, we got over it and said, okay, well, we got to make the best of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they supported us as much as we could, as much as they could. They didn't really have, I don't think they were really strong at radio at that time. You know what I mean? I think a song like Now, like Replica, could have been big on the radio. You know what I mean? We might have been a little bit ahead of its time, for that type of metal, clean vocal type thing going on,
Yeah.
But, I just felt that, it could have done a little better. But that's where Obsolete came in. Obsolete came in, and we, the band sold over at least 170,000 copies by the time Cars even came out.
Yeah.
So the first single was Resurrection. So Resurrection got a lot of airplay. It got, smaller rock radio. It got us some airplay. The video was a big hit. It was a great track. I thought it was a great track. But the band wanted Edge Crusher to be the first single.
Okay.
And we were pushing and we were fighting with the label. We were fighting. We were having arguments with Doug Keogh in his office saying, fuck you. We know our fans. They want fucking Edge Crusher. Right? But we ended up, of course, succumbing to what they wanted because they can hold things over your head. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So we ended up, editing Resurrection, which is a 6.5 minute song, editing it down to 3.5 minutes, right? It worked, sounded cool, made a video, and it worked for us, right? But we also still feel in our hearts that Edge Crusher, I think, would have been a banger. It would have been an ultimate banger. You know what I mean? And that would have been the big song. But don't get me wrong, Resurrection is a classic. It's a classic. And I think that at the time when we wrote that record, we couldn't have written Resurrection during Demanufacture because we just weren't there yet. We weren't there yet as songwriters. We just didn't have that experience yet. It wasn't until touring and, going into the studio, recording a lot of music, and then, writing a song like Resurrection, you could tell that it takes a band with experience to write a song like that.
Totally, man. It's like,
especially where we came from. You got Leechmaster, then all of a sudden, boom, you got Resurrection. So almost two completely different bands.
Yeah. It's like I was saying, like Demanufacture is kind of like the foundation that was set, and everything from there is the experience as it builds on itself and it folds over itself.
Well, a lot of people may not know that the idea, obviously, Demanufacture, we wanted to fucking make a statement, and we did, right? We wanted a fucking cold, ripping, industrial metal album, and we achieved it, right? But people were saying, we were getting a lot of criticisms, right? Even though every magazine gave it a 5 out of 5, a 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, right? Every magazine, all across the board, everywhere. We're like, wow. But fans and other musicians were like, oh, the drums are not real. That's a drum machine. Or this and that, right? And so we were like, well, you know what? Fuck that. So by the time we got to Obsolete, we were like, okay, let's make something that's a little bit more organic in tone wise and feeling, right? That because you have Demanufacture that's it's a cold mechanical fucking machine. Yeah. Of course, there's still a lot of there's plenty of human elements in there, but it had that tone where it was like this fucking machine's running down and it's just going to take you out, right? Whereas Obsolete, we're going to make it organic. We're going to make it look organic. We gave it a brown texture, right? We wanted to make it like, okay, people don't think we have groove. Fuck you. We're going to fucking give you groove, right? But we're going to give you groove in our way. Yeah. All right? Because at that time, by the time Obsolete came out, nu metal was just blowing the fuck up.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Korn's first record came out in 94. You know, they had a few records coming out, and there was so many other bands that followed after that, right? So we're like, fuck you, we're gonna give you our version of fucking groove.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. Shock. Boom, that's the Fear Factory groove right there.
Yeah.
You still have the kick drum patterns that made it sound like a machine underneath, but you had that fat groove just on top.
Yeah.
Then Edge Crusher. We were like, okay, let's consciously write a song with no double bass and let's see what that sounds like. You know what I mean? Because everything before had double bass. Everything before that. So we're like, all right, let's do a song with no double bass. So boom, there's Edge Crusher, no double bass.
It gives it more space.
There's Descent, no double bass. Boom, there's Resurrection, no double bass. Mm-hmm. We're like, wow, we actually wrote some songs with no double bass. That was like an achievement for us, you know what I mean? To not use double bass, you know what I mean? And it worked out great. Those songs are classics.
Yeah, man, it's kind of like it. In contrast to Demanufactured, you say it's kind of like a more human record because you're giving yourself.
We consciously did that. For instance, I'll give you an example. Demanufacture, you know, the song is 190 BPMs, and it's only 1 BPM for the whole song, right? Whereas when we did Obsolete, what we did is me and Raymond went into we had our studio, we recorded the tracks. Mm-hmm. Like 3 or 4 times of, like, let's say Resurrection. We recorded 3 or 4 times. We picked the best one.
Yeah. Right.
And then we were like, okay, let's write the click track to what we just played. Mm-hmm. So it's going to go like this. You know what I mean? There's, you know, let's say the song was at 175, then it goes up to 180, then it drops down to 170, and then it goes back up to 180, then it goes to 175. So has that natural flow, right? And that was how, when we went into to record the actual album, Raymond played to that click track, to the Human Element click track, which created a feel and a vibe, and it came out amazing.
I bet no one off the back of that record said, "Oh, it's a drum machine."
No, not at all. What we did is we actually sampled Raymond's kick. We sampled his live kick, his live snare, and his live toms, mm-hmm. and we made samples out of those. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you know what I mean? We made samples out of those. So when we did sound replacements, we were sound replacing it with Raymond's live samples that we just made. Yeah. Just to give it that fucking even more vibe, you know, more sample, you know, more human vibe to it.
Yeah. I fucking love this.
So we were actually able to take the machine and actually humanize it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, completely. So, yeah. I fucking love the studio stuff. I fucking love, like, talking stuff about production is my fucking thing. But I want to go back to the signing very briefly because it pitched, obviously it's all about Monte Connor and that relationship. You pitched Brujeria to him at the same time, right?
Pretty much. Like right after we did Soul of a New Machine, I go, hey, I got this other band. Right. We released a few 7-inches. Check it out. So I sent him the recordings. He's like, holy fuck, this is crazy shit. Mm-hmm. And remember, it was still at the height of death metal.
Yeah.
Right? So I pitched him the whole idea, the whole concept, the whole story behind it. And he fell in love with it. And he said, fuck yeah, we'll take that too. There's no Mexican death metal out there in the United States. You know what I mean? It was nothing like that. Sure, of course, some existed in other countries, right?
Yeah.
But nothing really existed like that here. Or I'm sure there was Spanish death metal bands singing in Spanish, right? Mm-hmm. But what we noticed is that there was a lot of foreign bands that sang in English. Mm-hmm. Like they never sang, some of them never sang in their native tongue, mm-hmm. right? So we were like, fuck, we're all Mexicans. Let's just fucking make a Mexicans, you know, sang in lyric record. Why don't we do that? So we did. And it worked. And it just sounds scary as fuck to some people.
It's interesting how Monty sees Fear Factory and goes, this is a genre elevating thing. It's got sort of the touch points on what Roadrunner's doing already, but it pushes it forward. And Brewery has a similar kind of thing in that it's a tried and tested band with it's got a history. They're tight as fuck, and they're already a unit. Why the fuck not? So with Monty, obviously you're still with him. This isn't the Monty podcast, but we know a lot of Roadrunner revolves around that fucking guy.
Yes. I can definitely say my career evolves around that guy for sure.
What makes him such an effective A&R guy, in your experience as an artist?
Just his talent his talent to recognize talent. You know what I mean? To recognize something about a band that maybe no one else sees. Don't get me wrong, Monty's made a lot of mistakes too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He first turned down System of a Down.
He turned him down? Fuck.
First, at the beginning.
Right.
And then when he became other labels that were interested in System of a Down, they're like, well, wait a minute, we need to rethink about this band.
Okay.
And so I know that they were able to invite the band down to Roadrunner Records and have a talk with them, but at that point they were in the clutches of Rick Rubin's,
machine
hand. Yeah. So yeah, it was too late. But Monty originally contacted Monty and said, you got to check out this band, blah, blah, blah. And Monty was into the band, right? Monty was into the band. And then he actually I actually had a hand in Monty giving the band their demo deal. Right. And, but there was no guarantee that the label could actually sign them. They only gave them money for a demo. And then, but they used the demo and shot it to other people, of course. Right. And so that's how that took off. But it was too late. Monty couldn't get him anymore after that. I also gave him Cold Chamber. I gave him Spine Shank, Static X. I don't know what happened with Static X. In This Moment, band called Earshot. I brought a few bands to him.
It's worth mentioning that Monty's batting average is pretty fucking good. There, as you say, there are some missed bits there, but it's like A&R is a dark art.
I heard he lost Deftones, Pantera. So there was a lot of bands that he could have signed. But don't get me wrong, Monty does still recognize a lot of talent, and he sees it in certain people, right? Certain musicians. And that takes a talent as well. You know what I mean? Like, gambling on a band like Fear Factory. Yeah. Hey, there was no melodic vocals in death metal at that time. There was no fucking, clean singing like that. A combination of both. There was nothing like that, And he took a chance, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm glad he took the chance because, look where I'm at now.
Well, this is the thing as well. Do you think, on reflection, Roadrunner knew how to handle Fear Factory more than, say, Interscope, or more than, say, another label that maybe threw you a bone, even though they didn't quite get the vocals? Do you think Roadrunner was I have the feeling at the time they're the best equipped to manage those fringe sounds. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that, yes, I would have to say yes, that Roadrunner got the band because of Monty Connor, right? But they definitely got the band more than, bands, labels like Metal Blade, Century Media, Nuclear Blast and Earache Records and stuff like that. They definitely got it more than those labels for sure. Now, more than Jimmy Iovine, I don't know. I don't think so. Jimmy Iovine's a whole other level.
Yeah,
I mean, and the band going over there could have been a whole different thing. But one of the things about Roadrunner in those first 3 albums is they let us be who we are. You know what I mean? They didn't get involved in the creative process. Monty did. He gave his critique on certain music and things like that, but they let us, for the most part, they let us be who we are. They let us create what we wanted to create. Like those three records, no one was sitting there saying, hey, there needs to be a radio track. No one said that. It wasn't until Digimortal where things took a turn.
And we'll come to that. We'll certainly come to that.
Yeah.
Did you have any other relationships with anyone else at the label? Say Doug. What was your impression of Case?
Yeah, my relationship with Doug was pretty much just fighting for things for the band. You know what I mean? But don't get me wrong, we definitely had a mutual respect for each other. And I 100% respect him. Right? He's doing what he's doing best for the label, and me was doing best what was best for the band. Right? And so we had differences of opinion, but it was really cool because, even though we've gotten to shouting matches, we never left there hating each other at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
You gotta, sometimes these labels may not get it at the moment. Maybe they don't understand,
So there's competing interests, isn't there? And if you can if that's what goes into the room, but not like the social element, then I guess it makes it a lot easier to walk out of there still sort of laughing.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we had a good relationship with at least I had a good relationship with everybody there. Yeah. Even Case.
Yeah.
Everybody and Bolvin, Joan Bolvin, who was like the accountant for Roadrunner Records, I love her to death. And just, of course, and Monty Connor and everybody else who worked, from the girl who answered the phone, to the owner of the record company.
Yeah.
Well, we were with them for so long, so you're going to have some sort of relationship with those people. You know what I mean? You
got to. I mean, at the end of the day, if they're meant to be batting your corner on every business front, you've got to understand how to work with them, and you've got to plant those seeds, haven't you, early doors?
Yeah. But the cool thing is, like I said, with Doug Keogh, even though we've had some shouting matches, we still have a lot of respect for each other. And, but that's just the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So you rock up to Bearsville Studio.
Mm-hmm.
You spend, 2 weeks on the guitar tone, or just the 1 week, and you're over budget by 100.
Okay. What happened? That's a whole different story. People just like to say, "Oh yeah, you spent so much time on the guitar tone," and blah blah blah. People just throw it nonchalantly, right? Or they blame me for it. What happened was, and I have to explain this all the time because I don't like how people say it.
Okay. Go for it.
And like I said, I still get blamed for it now. I read stuff on Twitter. Well, I heard you took 2 weeks on the guitar tone, so the bass player couldn't fucking play all the bass. I hear a lot of dumb stuff. Nobody was there. I was there, right?
I didn't mean it like that, by the way. There was a question on the end of it that's not related to guitar. I can just edit all that out and just ask that question.
I have to say it now.
Go for it.
I have to say it now. When Colin Richardson was a producer, right? Mm-hmm. I walk in. I have my modified Marshall JCM 800, custom amp, custom head, and my Marshall cabinet. Mm-hmm. He didn't like it. He's like, "Look, you got to use a 5150 with a tube screamer." And I said, "No." So imagine spending hours and hours and days arguing about this. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I'll say, "Okay, let's try your combination of what you want to use." He put it together. I started playing it, and I said, "Look, nothing against Machine Head, but this sounds like the Machine Head Burn My Eyes tone. That's exactly what Rob Flynn used. Mm-hmm. This sounds like the Carcass Heartwork tone because that's what they used." And remember, Colin produced both those records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
I go, That is them. That is them, but that's not me. I have my own individuality. I have my tone that I love. Mm-hmm. And so let's work on this. And he fought me and fought me and fought me to the point where we were wasting days. We were wasting days of this fucking stupid shit. And he was trying to get something, and he was saying, "Oh, I don't like the tone." And he's just like, was going, like he was kind of crying because he didn't get his way.
Sure.
Right. But luckily I met a guy named Dr. No who played in a band called Bad Brains. He had a store down the street. I happened to be at the store, met him, talked to him, told him my issues. He was super nice, and he brought some speaker cabinets over for me to try. We hooked it up to this Mesa Boogie, brand new Mesa Boogie that he had, hooked up my head, and boom, to me, that was it. Mm-hmm. So Colin finally started to warm up to the idea. Remember, we're going on about 10 days now.
Yeah. How lucky is it that he was just running that fruit stand, Dr. No? You just
exactly. And I was getting really pissed off because I'm like, look, I already got my sound. You're wasting time. You're wasting money. And so that was the first time we butt heads, and I couldn't let it go. I was so pissed. Couldn't let it go. Right? So then we finally got the guitar tone. Great. Boom. Finished the guitar tracks. Right? Finished all the guitar tracks. Didn't change any riffs. Didn't change anything. But then when it came time to play bass, our bass player just didn't have the feel. Right? So Colin Richardson said, look, this guy's not cutting it. You're going to have to come over here and play bass. And I'm like, oof, I know how bass players are going to get.
Yeah.
So I went back, I listened to the bass tracks, and I realized, okay, you're right. Colin, you're right. You know, I don't agree with it, but you're right. And so I had to tell Christian that he couldn't play bass on the record because he just wasn't cutting it. So I had to play bass on the record. I finished the bass tracks in 3 days. You got to remember, I just recorded 2 weeks of guitar tone.
Yeah.
So playing bass, only having to play one track, I finished it really quick, right? And so people were saying we were behind schedule. We were, but we made it up. We made up in time by me taking only 2-3 days to finish the bass.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah. It's still an ongoing topic.
Yes.
Ongoing.
I didn't mean
still,
it to be that.
Yes. Remember, this is 1995, and it's still going on in 2021.
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah, I apologize for taking it down that road. I didn't mean to. I will direct people to meet me.
No. It's okay. This is kind of cool that it's still here, too. I hope you keep it because it's still here. And so I think it's still great that we'll still talk about it and still address it.
There's the whole process.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. I was just saying, like, there's bits before the Bearsville studio bit, which is covered really well in Meet Me as well. So I'll direct people to that for the full. I can't remember the name of the first studio with the 16 fucking tracks. 16 channels that were working on the desk and all that stuff. That's covered really well in Meet Me. But the point I was going for was the project as a whole was taking a beating. But what I was going to ask was, were you dragged into New York at that point in front of Doug and saying what the fuck's going on? Or was Monty batting your corner at that point? Because the project, we know how it ends. The project gets completed and demanufactured, gets made. So clearly Roadrunner is still fighting your corner and going, we know what this means. We know what this record means.
Yeah. Monty saw the vision of this record. He's like, I know it's going to be big because he felt it. He heard the demos. You know, he's like, shit. So we initially started at Chicago Tracks. Things fell apart there, and we wasted about $15,000 there before we went to Bearsville, New York.
Yeah.
So, but remember we had a budget, so we had to stick within our budget, right? But it didn't go over budget until we went to Bearsville and we fired I got the label to agree to fire Colin Richardson because at first the label and the other 3 band members were for Colin Richardson mixing the album. But me, and I'm gonna bring Reese into this equation because Reese, was kind of like my guy that I could talk to about different production stuff, right? And I was like, look, I'm not happy. I want to use, I'm thinking about using Greg Greeley, the guy who mixed Fears the Mind Killer Millennium album, and Millennium album from Frontline. I go, I would like to use that guy. And Reese is like, yeah, I'll put you in touch with him. Reese knows the guy, and he's like, and Reese saw that I wasn't happy because he saw that Colin Richardson wasn't really feeling all the keyboards. You know what I mean? That wasn't exactly his forte. And there's a quote where Reese says, like, he didn't even feel welcome when he was in the studio when Colin was around. You know what I mean? Not because of the band, not because of the band members, but because of that.
Yeah.
Yes. So Reese saw, it's like, Dino, I could tell, I know you know what you want, and this is not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right. And so I convinced Monty Connor to fork out some more money
mm-hmm.
to get somebody else to mix the record and fly back to Los Angeles and start mixing the record here with Greg Reilly, Reese Fulber, and myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. And from there, the minute we started on the first track and just the production ideas that Greg Reilly had and Reese Fulber had, I mean, I was literally crying. I had tears because finally I got someone to see my vision. You know what I mean? And I got someone to see it, and I had the label behind me believing in it. The band members eventually came around, because at the time they wanted Colin Richardson to mix it. I was kind of like the lone wolf in this situation. And everybody saw it, and everybody finally found it. When they started hearing the mixes going, it was like, I swear to God, it was tears of joy. I was like, fuck yeah. I go, finally. And then you listen to the record now. Listen to it. And it's an amazing record. Some people say that, good things aren't always easy or don't come easy. You know what I mean? And in that situation, yeah, it's true. And unfortunately, in the Fear Factory situation, a lot of it's true.
I really like it when you talk about Colin, not because of the headbutting and things like that, but because it exemplifies kind of the sportsmanship about it, because you never say a bad word about him other than we butted heads, but there's a mutual respect there. And even now, I think I've read something from Colin. It might have been like a 20-year retrospective or something like that, where Colin even goes, you know what, it was the right call in the end of the day. So, all's well ends well. Until we get to the end from Roadrunner United.
I think that we were just in a different, everybody was a different place in their life at that time. Yeah. You know what I mean? The woman who helped us back in the day, she became our manager, right? And during the recording process of Soul Bleeding Machine, our first record, she meets Colin Richardson, falls in love, and they get married, and they move to England. So it was very difficult for us at that time, back in 1992, to afford phone calls to England for a manager to manage us, right? Remember, pre-emails, pre-affordable computers, right? Free cell phone. Some people can't compute that because they weren't even born yet. You know what I mean? So that's why I have to say it. But anyways, so we couldn't really afford her as a manager. So we ended up having to fire her, and she kind of took it the wrong way. So during the recording of Demanufacture, remember, she's married to Colin Richardson. She kind of took it out on us during those recordings.
Yeah, yeah.
In particularly me.
There's a number of stars that are aligning during the production of that
in particular
record.
Of me, and Colin Richardson was kind of in the middle of this ex-manager, and me, kind of also butting heads. Because remember, she was running all of Colin Richardson's business, right? So we didn't agree on some of the business things either. So I was butting heads with her. Colin's in the middle. He's like, you can't take it. We're having issues with the guitar tone. I'm sorry. Issues with him liking my guitar tone. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of stuff going on there, and it was just added a lot of tension and friction during that album.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm okay. I can function under friction and tension. I can function. I'm okay. Other people can't handle it.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason. Well, it was one of the reasons why I could tell that maybe Colin's heart wasn't into it anymore. Maybe, all this shit that was going down between me, him, and his wife, manager, our ex-manager, all this tension that was going on. He just wanted to get the fuck out. He just wanted to finish the project and get the fuck out. That was kind of like the vibe I got.
Yeah.
And you could hear it in the mix. So that's why I was able to convince Monty Connor, hey, this is not working out. Listen to these mixes. And Monty's like, yeah, you're right. So I go, this is what I suggest. And he was like, okay. I go, but we're going to need about another $30,000. He's like, oh. He goes, okay, I'll get it for you. And he did it. And look what came out.
I'd love to be the fly on the wall when he walks into Doug's office when that happened. So moving on.
Or Monty. I have to say, I really hand it to Monty for really going to bat for us when he needed to. And like, again, I love Doug Keogh, so there's a lot of history behind these records. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot
so much, dude.
There's so many stories, there's so many stories. And I'm sure if you talk to the other guys in the band, they'll have different stories as well. I mean, those records we toured during Demanufacture, that was a long tour. We did long tours.
That's
very long tours.
Next question is quite nicely. So I asked people, there seems to be, this is a milestone moment for the label, right? But every time I ask anyone about it, they just go, oh, it was amazing. I don't remember anything. I was fucking hammered for 3 days. So Dino, can you tell me your memories of Dynamo Night in 95?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, it was like the Roadrunner Fest, right? Because every band from Roadrunner was on that festival. I definitely was not wasted. Not at all. I wanted to enjoy every moment of that festival, and it was great. I can go back and watch the footage, and it just brings me back to a good time where everybody knew each other. At Biohazard, Type of Negative, Machine Head, Soulfly, Doggy Dog, Life of Agony. I mean, we knew every band, so it was like the minute everybody came out of their buses and stuff like, hey, so it was just one of those moments. It was a great time. It was a great moment. And I loved that festival. It was I just remember when Type O Negative played, right? Type O Negative was coming on, their intro started, and it started raining. But it fit really well because that's when they were kind of like using the dead trees in the background.
Yeah.
They had these like dead trees that they would bring out. They were all black. Everything was green and black and stuff. And it was like, then all of a sudden it starts raining at the festival. They went on like, just when the sun was about to come down, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, sun was coming down, rain was out. And it was just like, wow, it was just fitting. Everybody was like, whoa. Everybody was just mesmerized. Pete Steele singing all those songs, drinking his big bottle of wine and just playing. And everybody was just like, to me, they were like probably one of the best bands of the night.
Yeah.
For sure.
And Paradise Lost were the headliners, but I think that no one talks about them.
I didn't remember who headlined, to be honest with you.
Dude,
but that's cool. Those guys are great. Love those guys.
Yeah, man. I'd love to know the numbers of the sales for the band before and after, because from a performance perspective, I think there's a lot of things that kicked off. I know like Dog Eat Dog then went on tour with Biohazard because they blew up in Europe. There's a few sort of moments like that, which I think Dynamo is the catalyst for. And I think I need to do some more homework on that one, I think.
I just think that Roadrunner had all the hot bands at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of bands from Roadrunner were on that thing. I mean, that's why they called it Roadrunner Fest. They didn't even call it Dynamo. They called it Roadrunner Fest.
I was speaking to Alain Verhav, who was the international marketing person in Amsterdam at the time. He made bespoke Roadrunner umbrellas and Roadrunner like mugs and things like that. So everyone who was backstage, who was just getting hammered with the bands and stuff, could just have this weird bespoke merch that they'd made. It just seems like a really weird and special time.
That's why you would think it's a Roadrunner Fest. One of the reasons.
Yeah, completely. I mean? I nearly missed one then. The video game stuff. So my actual first experience with Fear Factory was I was a big gamer back in the day. And my introduction to metal was Carmageddon 2, which had Iron Maiden and a band called, I think it was Conscientious or something like that. But I've got a mate who is a bit of a completionist, and he got Carmageddon 1 and invited me over. And that was my first exposure to Fear Factory, which I think it was Zero Signal on like the intro screen or something like that. But from what I can gather, I think it is like one of the first times that happened where people were giving out their full actual songs, not just like MIDI recreated ones, but full licensed arrangements out to the video game companies. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Raymond that kind of orchestrated that because it was his scene, more or less. It was kind of his thing. How did the label take that? Because that's a completely different thing for them, isn't it? I wonder if they'd even considered it. Well,
that was definitely, Raymond was a gamer. And he said, you know what? I I want to get into this market. I want to get into this business. So I'm going to use Fear Factory and pitch Fear Factory and try to get my foot in the door. So he started going to all the video game conventions, and he put instrumental tracks on a CD, and he put his card there, and he just went and started handing out these instrumental music CDs of Fear Factory until finally he started getting callbacks. And he started doing business with these people, and he started opening the doors for us, right? And then it just kind of grew from there. We got so many fucking offers. It was crazy. So Raymond was the catalyst to Roadrunner starting a placement department where they place music in video games, movies, and so on and so on. Because of Raymond, the label was forced to do that because there was so much business coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Fear Factory. And that was a whole other income, just so you know.
Yeah. It's completely fresh for that time. And the technology was only just there because at that point it was cartridge based. So you couldn't have like full songs on there. But it's really cool because if you think of it from the game perspective, like the industry, imagine if someone just comes to your desk and goes, oh, have you got a composer for your music? Not yet. Well, here's some songs. That's like months off the production schedule. Makes it loads easier.
Yeah. Well, Raymond saw that idea. He was like, like there's no bands. What the fuck? I think there might have been something, very little, if anything at all, So Raymond's like, fuck that. I'm going to get my band on these fucking games. I think our music should be on these games. Cause you probably might've played something where back in the 90s, maybe, I don't know. I don't even know if Tony Hawk still existed back then. Did he?
I think it was 9.
Because we're talking demanufactured days.
Yeah. So 95 to 98. I think Tony Hawk was 99.
Okay. So because I think it was before they were putting like punk metal in those skate games and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So there might have been some stuff in there, but Raymond really took the bull by the horn and really made a lot of connections. As a matter of fact, when he was out of Fear Factory, he was just writing video game music for games. He was writing music for games. Yeah. And it was great because there was a guy whose name was Tony Tallarico. And Tony Tallarico was a very famous music composer for video games. I mean, he became very wealthy from that, right? Mm-hmm. So we were doing a game, Speed Racer. I don't remember which game.
Test Drive 5.
Test Drive 5, maybe. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know. But the video game company said, hey, look, we want Fear Factory, but we think it would be cool if you wrote original songs for us. Mm-hmm. And you should get Tony Tallarico to come help you produce it. And we were like, what? Fuck yeah. So they paid us a shit ton of money. We went in the studio and we bashed out like 3 or 4 songs. Right? Really, some of them were only like 30 seconds long. Uh-huh. Some of them were a minute long. Right? You got to remember, it's for a video game, so they just repeat it over and over. They don't necessarily play a whole song, right? And so we went in there, we just bashed out a bunch of these little snippets of songs, and it was great. We had a blast, and it was like definitely a big experience that, because Tony was there, and he was kind of like the conductor. Seriously, like the conductor.
You can see the jigsaw pieces falling in.
Yeah, play this, play that. Yeah, I was like, fuck yeah. I was like, oh, man, it was so much fun. Yeah. It was like, yeah. And it was so exciting because he was excited to work with us because he had become a fan, right? He had become a fan, right? Can't say he's a metalhead because he's not a metalhead, but he's become a fan, and because of Raymond and because of the music style, and he liked it. He was like, wow, this is amazing. This sounds killer. I mean, anybody in the video game industry hears demanufacture or remanufacture, they're going to be like, what the fuck, right? Mm-hmm. It's perfect for video game music. Yeah. So he was really excited to work with us. We were excited to work with him. And like I said, he was in the studio with us. We were all live, and he was like conducting the band and yeah. More of that. Go. It's like, and it was great. It was just a fun time.
It's an innovation, which I think is just completely understated. And I think it's still even workable today, like video game music, not even from a nostalgia perspective, but the stuff that people are doing in these sort of independent sort of fringe games is sort of really pushing the mark. So good for you.
Raymond really opened the doors and opened the doors for that industry, and he definitely opened a lot of people's eyes and ears. Where video game companies were like, oh, maybe we can hit up Rob Zombie, White Zombie. Maybe we can hit up Metallica. Maybe we can hit up, Rage Against the Machine. Maybe we can hit up these bands and this music. And then boom, it just opened the door and took off.
Yeah. It's exactly that kind of market as well. Like, who's the metalhead? Who's into this kind of stuff? It's all like the Venn diagram crosses over, so it's an open goal. Anyway,
yeah,
well done, lads.
I mean, you don't know how many times we hear people tell us, "Yeah, I discovered you from this game. I discovered you from this game. I discovered you from this PC game." You know what I mean? It's like I can't even tell you the name of all the video games we were on. I can't even tell you because one, I wasn't a gamer. Two, it's just too many to remember.
So I mentioned earlier, Typo had a massive party when they first got the gold. Did Roadrunner throw you a party when Obsolete went gold?
No, what the fuck? No, they didn't. No, they didn't at all. I mean, dude, we were a very busy band. We were always on the road. We actually got our gold records when we were on the road. We were actually playing. We were playing in New York City at the. I can't remember the name of the place, but we got our gold records there at a show, headlining show in New York City.
Okay.
So no time for a party.
Yeah. The show was the party for everyone else but you.
Correct. Oh no, it's the party for me too. Trust me, I love playing every night.
Yeah, man. Tell me about the relationship with the label as we go into Digimortal and things start becoming a bit strained, I guess.
Here we go. Here we go.
If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to.
No. By all means. I don't mind talking about stuff that happened to me, whatsoever, or things that happened,
Yeah.
Well, during the Digimortal process, the record label said, hey, well, you're just coming off a gold record of Obsolete. I think that you need to write some more accessible songs. And I said, what? Radio fucking songs? They go, yeah, accessible songs. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and Monty goes, we're going to send a producer over to meet you guys, and maybe he can guide you into writing these type of songs.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know. I was really against it. The other guys in the band were like, Dino, look, you need to let go of your control and let somebody else come in and give us some ideas and see what happens. So I agreed to it. It's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes when you're an artist, you're closed to criticism. You're closed to other ideas. That's just it. It's your baby. It's your thing. It's kind of hard to explain to a listener how the feeling is. Yeah. But when you feel like it's your thing, you don't want somebody else to come up and try to ruin it for you, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I agreed. The record company sent in some producers. They're like, okay, Dino, play this. Gang, gang, gang. Like, what the fuck is that? It's not fucking Fear Factory. What the
kids are listening to.
Yeah. I was just like, what's that? It's whack. And I was like, and then he's trying to, he's telling Raymond, like this. Da. And it's like,
so they're trying to rebrand the thing, which he
tried to change the band. He wanted to change the band. So I said, look, you got to go. Right? You got to go. So he left. So the guys in my band were saying, look, you can't be so hard on these guys. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll go along. I'll play along with you. So we ended up actually recording some demos of our own. By the time we were doing Acres of Skin, we had all these songs written.
Yeah.
And then this other producer comes in. I can say his name. His name is Ulrich Wild. He's a good friend of mine. Great guy. He comes in. Here's our demo. And he goes, these demos sound amazing. You don't need me. And we're like, really? He goes, yeah, man, this is fucking good. And I said, really? Because the record label wants this guy or told this guy to come in. He's like, really? That guy? You guys, I don't see that working, right? Anyways, so Ulrich was like, you don't need me. It sounds great. So then they send in this other guy. His name was his last name was Springer. I can't remember his first name right now.
Okay.
But it was Springer. And he actually had a few good suggestions. Because we're like, look, we got about 8 songs written for the record. Check them out. And he goes, okay. He listens to the songs. And he goes, okay, let's play them live. And I'll give you my opinion. And I'll give you my criticism. I have a few ideas. So he was like, Linchpin. We played on Linchpin. Bada, bada. Love the track. We had the pre-chorus would go like 4 bars. We had a 4-bar pre-chorus going into the chorus. And he goes, cut it down to 2 bars. I'm like, why? I was like, why? It sounds good as it is. You gotta remember, I got this shield up. You know what I mean? I'm protecting Fear Factory. That's just was my, that's how I felt.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
No one can come in and tell me what to do. That kind of thing, right? And I can see the other guys going like, calm down, relax. And then, so he goes, cut it down to 2 bars. I'm like, okay, let's try it. And then Bert, only sing this part 1 time. Okay. So we did it. And I was like, well, let's just do. He goes, let's do it again. Let's try it 1 more time. So we do it again and blah, blah. We do it like 4 times. And by the 4th, 5th time, I was like, this is actually pretty fucking good. But I don't want to tell him that. I don't want to tell him that, but this is actually pretty good. I eventually did tell him, you know what? You're right. This was good. It was a good thing. And so he helped us with a handful of songs. Like, just gave us suggestions like what will become. Down, out, down, down, out, down, down, down. There's the pre-chorus used to be the verse, and the verse used to be the pre-chorus. He said, flip it. He said, flip it around. And so we did it, and boom, it made sense, and it fucking worked. Just little suggestions like that. He didn't change the band. He didn't change my riff. He didn't say play these boring chords. He was like, no, he gave us a few arrangement suggestions and a few, things like that, and it worked out great. And I was like, I like this guy. What do you think about this song? It got to be like, oh, okay, let's listen to this song. Let's see if we can work this song out, blah, blah. And he did like about 5 or 6 songs with us like that. And we're like, okay, I like this guy. And so it worked out. That one worked out. It's just, I guess it's just the process of trying to find the right guy that works well with the band. You know what I mean?
Was it a struggle though, having a revolving door of people that Roadrunner was sending in though?
Yes, it was. Yeah, he was the last guy we settled on. So, but then the label wanted us to use Bob Rock to produce the album.
After all this,
I don't know. I think Saint Anger was already out by then, right? Well, I know Load and Reload were already out by 94, 95. Yeah. I don't know if Saint Anger was out. I don't know what year that came out.
That was 2003.
Okay, so we were before Saint Anger. Anyways, because this is 2000. And so I actually had a conversation with Bob Rock on the phone. I believe he was in Hawaii at the time. Mm-hmm. Here I was I had a conversation with him, and we seemed to get along, and everything he seemed to really like the band. He liked the songs that he heard. And so we were kind of like tentatively scheduling a time to go on with Bob Rock. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Bob fucking Rock.
Yeah, especially like a decade into his like.
Yeah. I was excited, but at the same time cautious. Right?
Yeah.
So he ended up pulling out before we were going to go in the studio. He ended up pulling out because he ended up taking a much bigger, better gig.
Okay.
Can't remember what band it was, but it was somebody big, probably paying him millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. So we ended up not using Bob Rock. We ended up using a guy named, actually us and Reese produced the album with the engineer, Mike Plotnikoff, who ended up mixing the album. Mm-hmm. So, and it came out great. I still love the record. There's probably a few things I would, what's that?
It's my favorite.
Yeah, there's probably a couple of things I would have changed on there, but very little.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was that, right? So hang on. In terms of the timeline, this is where we get to a point where the band splits, albeit temporarily. Divine Heresy.
We split. Well, first of all, the tension started during the writing process.
Okay.
Like I said, I was very protective of Fear Factory, and I was trying to hold on, and not, very close-minded to letting outside people come in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's where the tension first started. You know what I mean? There was a lot more hip hop elements than I would have liked to be on the record. Sure, maybe as B-sides, but there was too many hip hop elements for me on the record.
Sure.
For my liking. Not that I don't like hip hop. I love hip hop.
Sure.
But when you're trying to create your own artwork, your own piece of art, sometimes you don't always want those outside elements.
No.
Ingrained in the
on your baby.
the record, yeah, and your baby. And so that's kind of like how I was, and that's kind of like where tension started. All right.
Yeah.
And then the second time was when we went in to do the video for Lynchpin, right?
Okay.
So we're doing a video for Lynchpin, and you guys know the video as it is.
Mm-hmm.
The video used to be completely different.
Okay.
The video looked like a complete, like how do I explain it? Too artsy. It's very artsy. First of all, Lynchpin's a very fun, upbeat song that people can get into. And the video wasn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
The original video wasn't like that. So I had a little bit of clashes with the band, and I was like, "Look, this is not working." Mm-hmm. I wish I had a copy of that original video because people can really see what I was talking about, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, we got to change this video, man. This video. So I talked to the record company. I go, Monty, watch this video. Does this fit with the track? Monty's like, I see what you're saying. I don't think it does. I go, I think somebody needs to re-edit it and recut it. So that was the second thing that I had issue with the band,
mm-hmm.
because, Burton was for the artsy one. I was not for the artsy one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, me getting a label behind changing the edit of the video, mm-hmm. and getting somebody else to come in and add certain elements. So my element was, hey man, find some machinery that'll go along with the beat. Oh, no problem. Go to stockfootage.com, blah, blah, found a machinery. So you kind of see like this press going, like, that fits the band. That's it. That's the image, right?
So, industrialization, and
and it worked. It worked perfect. It worked perfect, and it's one of our most streamed and downloaded songs. It's actually the biggest streamed downloaded songs.
Yeah,
right.
Completely.
And so that was the second clash, and then the other clash was obviously clashes that I had with Burton on tour. We had clashes. Then we had altercation, and then it just, for some reason, he couldn't let it go. Mm-hmm. I was able to let it go. I like snipping things in the butt. If you have issues, I like to take care of it right away.
Yeah.
I don't like to dwell on it, because if you dwell on it, then it could turn into worse. Mm-hmm. Then people stop talking to each other, and people stay angry at each other forever, blah, blah, blah. But once you talk it out, get it over with, then you can move on. But I guess he had more issues with that than I did, right? And he ultimately quit the band, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. Then the band reforms, I don't know, a year or two later, without me.
And this is like 2002, 2004-ish, isn't it?
2002, and then I think Archetype came out in 2004.
Yeah, I think so.
I want to say. So by February 2002, I was out of the band.
Yeah.
After we got back from Australia, we toured there January, February, and when we got back, Bert broke up, and then we were actually getting prepared to write the follow-up to DG Mortal, right? Bert blamed Raymond and Christian blamed Bert, so I never really got the true story.
Sure. As is the case with these things. Yeah.
I never got the true story when I was out of the band. I've heard Bert recently say he said I changed as a person. I've heard him say all kinds of things. So I don't really know, because it's very, conflicting, right? But I think it's because, me personally, I think it's because, I've heard them say, well, Dino's a control freak, right? And I've heard Reese say, well, if you didn't have Dino, the manufacturer wouldn't exist. You know what I mean? So Reese sees it as like, I'm an artist and I know what I want. I see the vision, and no one else is going to try to come and take away that vision, right? So that's how Reese sees it. Reese just sees it completely different than the other three guys in the band, which caused obviously tension. So that's why, and I never, like I said, I never got the real story. So I don't even know. So they ended up starting the band without me. They released 2 records, but by the time the second record came along, Transgression, there was already inner turmoil within those 3 guys.
Right.
Things fell apart.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there. This is stuff that Bert's told me, or other people working for the band had told me. So I wasn't necessarily there. I'm only quoting those people, right? Or just what I've read or heard about, right?
Sure.
So there was a lot of tension between there. Bert kind of leaves the band in a way. He just doesn't want to work with those guys. Okay. So the band's in limbo. Raymond and Christian are doing Archaea, which fell apart. And then Bert decides to bring the band back together around 2009. He asks me, we ended up seeing each other at a Ministry concert. We talked, and I thought that was okay. I didn't have an issue with that. You know, a few years have already gone by, about 6 years or so had already gone by since I've been out of the band since 2002. So a little more, 7 years, right?
Okay.
7 years. And so after talking to Bert that one night, I was like, okay, so this is okay. I'll give him my number. So I gave him my number, and he asked me, hey, can I call you? I was like, sure. So I gave him my number. He ended up calling me. And, you know, at first it was just small talk. How you doing? How's the family? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I mean, what you been up to? That kind of thing. Second call was like, you know, kind of similar conversation, right? And he's like, yeah, wouldn't it be? Then it was kind of like, you know, he throws it out, hey, man, wouldn't it be cool if we worked together again? Yeah, maybe. See, you know, blah, blah, blah. By the third call, he's like, look, I'm going to get to the point. I'm going to get to the point now. I want you to come back. What do you think about coming back into the band? I'm going to say, how? Like, what's the plan? What's the, you know, what are you trying to get at?
Yeah.
He goes, what do you think about coming back into the band with me, Raymond, and Christian? And I said, well, just because me and you are talking doesn't mean that I haven't passed things up with Raymond and Christian. Sure. So things would have to be talked. We'd have to all talk about it and get it together. And he goes, well, look, he goes, I'm gonna come out to LA, and I'm gonna sit down with Raymond and Christian, and I'm gonna tell them about you, and I'm gonna tell them, because look, I have a record contract ready to go. So he told Raymond and Christian, he's like, I want Dino to come back, and I have a record contract. Now, Bert had stated all this. I'm quoting Bert here because Bert actually said it in a blabbermouth interview. It was all there. The story's all there. So Raymond and Christian both said no to everything. Fuck Dino, fuck your contract, right? So Bert told me before the interview, before he met up with those guys, Bert asked me if I wanted to join him in that meeting. And I said, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think I'm ready to talk to those guys yet.
Sure.
I think you should talk to them first and see what happens. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what he did. Where recently he quoted and said I wasn't at that meeting, but he made it sound like I didn't want to go to the meeting, which is kind of true, because I wasn't ready to talk to those guys yet.
But there's context. Ready. Yeah.
Yes. Context is a little bit different. But I wasn't ready to talk to those guys yet at all. I mean, I just, you know, I had also gone through a different lawsuit, because when you're in a divorce, you got to split everything up with the guys in the band. And so things got ugly when shit was being split up. We're talking to like when they were going to put out Architect. You know, when I left the group, obviously there's corporations involved, there's trademarks involved, there's a lot of money involved. So you have to kind of split all that things up, and I need to get my share because I'm going solo now. So whatever my portion that was connected to Fear Factory now has to be separated from that, and
come to you separately.
Come to me separately, right? And so that was a big ordeal.
Yeah, I bet
you know what I mean?
Fucking was, yeah.
Yeah, so lawyers
picking
got involved.
the 360 and making it into a 270 with 90 over there.
Yeah, so lawyers got involved. So it was a little hairy. It was a little hairy there. Things are said in the press, of course. Like every band breakup, typical thing is he said, she said, blah 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 blah. He's a dick. He's a dick. He's an asshole. He's an asshole. All the typical stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck that. I didn't want to go. I didn't even need Fear Factory at the time, right? I was doing a successful Divine Heresy. Yes. We put out 2 very successful records, and I was able to accomplish that with 2 different singers. You know what I mean? On each record. So we were actually going to go on to the 3rd record, believe it or not. And we've toured with Divine Heresy, toured with everybody during that time. Arch Enemy, Chimera, All That Remains, Shadows Fall, Static X took us out a few times. It was like we were just on the road with everybody. Yeah, we were on fire. That's kind of like more of me calling in favors.
I remember because I was just starting to play guitar at the time, and I couldn't get rid of you. You were all over the fucking place. Every press outlet, every sort of guitar magazine, it was all fucking Dino from Divine Heresy, and I wasn't totally aware of Fear Factory at that point, save for my Carmageddon experience. So
it's funny. It's funny you say that because a lot of people didn't know Fear Factory when I was in Divine Heresy, or they heard of it, but they didn't make the connection, which was kind of cool because it had its own fans.
It had its own vibe completely.
And its own vibe. And then at some point, the Fear Factory fans started to come over, to migrate into the Divine Heresy fans. And then it started to grow, right? But anyway, so when Bert had that meeting with the guys, with Raymond and Christian, I just wasn't ready to go to that meeting. I wasn't ready to meet with those guys. I just wasn't there yet. And I hadn't patched anything up with those guys. Just me walking cold into that meeting.
Yeah, could have been.
It could have been a bigger disaster. Yeah, exactly. So Bert went there. Things didn't work out. Bert's like, well, I'm going to give you guys one last shot. And if it doesn't work out, I'm going to sue you. And then the last thing they said is, I'll see you in court. So then Bert asked me, he says, look, those other guys are not going to come to the table. Do you want to join me or not? Because I'm going to have to sue these guys now. Right? And I'm like, do I want to put my foot in that water or not? Is it cold? Oh, it's cold. It's a little cold. Do I go there? You know what I mean? Do I do that? Do I take the chance? So I flipped a coin. I lost. I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to join you.
Wow. On a coin.
On a coin.
Man, that's how I make most of my decisions.
It was just one of those moments like, do I do this? Do I not do this? And I decided, you know what? Fuck it. Let's take the chance. And I did. And we ended up suing Raymond and Christian. And we came to an agreement where Bert and I would own the name.
Yeah.
And we would just have to pay them.
Just one lump sum and it's done with.
Well, no. We had to pay them X amount. We buy the name, right? Which we did. And then for so many years, we got to give them a certain percentage.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough. And if that's the agreement, that's the
compromise. And then that went crazy. That just was another thing.
Yeah. Fuck.
We got into a bigger court battle, right? And then Bert filed for bankruptcy, but he failed to list certain items on the bankruptcy. When you file for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you have to list all your assets.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're talking about from your shoes to your gold ring, to your businesses, to your car,
to the wallpaper,
to your trademark, to your songs. You're a musician. This is a business. This is a band. This is those are assets. Those are considered assets. Anything that's worth anything is considered an asset. Right.
Yeah.
And so Bert didn't list everything. And so he eventually got found out. The court found out. And unfortunately, he lost the name. What happens is that the court has the right to sell your assets to pay back your creditors. Mm-hmm. So whoever you list in your bankruptcy that you owe money to, you have to, the court can take your assets. Like if you had boats and houses and cars and businesses, the court can take all that and sell it and pay back the people you owe money to.
It's the liquidation process is the priority.
Liquidation process, exactly.
Yeah.
So they were liquidating Bert's assets, and one of those assets was the trademark, his 50% ownership in the trademark. So what the court does is they put it up for auction, and people can bid on it. You know, people in Bert's case, Bert had a trademark, so people in the music business, the court would market it to people in the music industry to buy this asset, right? Yeah. Because that's who would know what to do with the asset.
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so people bid on it. People bid on Bert's 50% of this trademark. You know, a lot of people like to say, "Oh, Dino, you stole it from Burton. Oh, Dino, you sued Burton." I go, I was never in a lawsuit with Burton. Never. There's been a lot of misunderstanding out there and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff that Bert kind of said that diluted the water, right? Mm-hmm. He kind of put me, Raymond, and Christian all in the same thing that made people believe that all three of us sued him or whatever, right? Yep. But in reality, this was all his own actions, and it was his own bankruptcy.
And it's worth knowing that all this is off public record as well. Nothing
that I'm saying is new.
Yeah.
Or nothing that I'm saying hasn't been reported already.
There we go. That's just the disclaimer.
Right?
There we go. Yeah.
I'm only telling you my version of the story that's already been told.
Yes, your point of view. Where you sat looking at
where Metal Sucks did a whole breakdown of it with all the contracts and all that stuff and all the bankruptcy filings and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, the trademark went up for sale, went up for auction. People bid on it, and I bid on it, right? And I was like, shit, I got to fucking, other people, somebody else might own it.
Yeah. So
I already owned my 50%.
Yeah.
So how that works out, this is something new. Maybe nobody knows really how this works. But if I own 50% and Joe Schmo owns 50%, if I wanted to do Fear Factory, I'd have to give that other guy 50%. Do you understand?
Yeah, which wouldn't make any sense.
Well,
it does legally, but from a band perspective,
from a band perspective,
no.
Yeah, because it could be just some dude who buys trademarks for a living. Because there's people out there that do that, right?
Trolls.
And maybe he's like, hey, well, I'll buy this because I think it's going to be worth something. And that other schmuck over there owns it, owns the other half. So if he wants to use it, he's got to pay me. But if he wants to use it, he would have to pay me. Mm-hmm. So it works both ways, right? So I was like, I can't let this happen.
Yeah.
I got to buy the name. I'll buy the name. Me and Burton can continue Fear Factory. Mm-hmm. See, the thing about it is like everybody's like, why don't you just buy the name and give it back to him? I go, he just lost it in federal court. Now, if I bought his share and gave it right back to him, the court is going to say, you were in collusion. You guys are fooling us here.
Yeah.
What's going on? So I couldn't do that. Right?
Yeah.
So I would have, if I bought that Bird's half, I would have to own the whole thing, but I could give him 50% of the share profits. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I can give him 50% of the profits.
No ownership, but
we can
for the beneficiary.
No ownership, but you can be equal. You get equal quite as myself. I've said this in interviews before. Blah blah blah. It's out there. Anyways, so it got sold. I was lucky that I won. Mm-hmm. Ended up doing a deal. Got it all worked out. I'm still making payments on it, by the way. Yeah, it's a lot of money making payments on it, and boom, that's just where we're at. And then Bert decides to quit for whatever reason, which I don't know why. I really don't know why he quit. But I all I can go by is what he says. Like, I don't want to work with Dino. I don't want to talk to Raymond or Christian ever again. Blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like, okay, you really, let's get past all that bullshit talk again, and let's just get back to work and make records. But, you know, he doesn't want to for whatever reason.
And that's fine. That's his decision. Then now we're in a point where the wheels turning and we're jumping back on.
Yeah, we're at the point where you know, I'm going to decide on a singer any day now. Yeah. There's multiple people that are really good, really good. Even some females that are really good. Yeah. You know what I mean? And making a decision is going to be definitely tough. You know, will the fans accept them? Will the fans not accept them? You know, that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, I worry about all those kind of things, but at the same time, I got to be like how I was in the beginning and not fear change. I necessarily don't fear change, but I do take into consideration how fans are going to take it.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Right? I mean, I can't base everything I do on what a fan might think, because then I'll never get anything done. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but it is definitely a big decision, right? And whoever I choose, I want them there to be for the long run, because I plan on making, you know, a few more records, you know, before I'm retired or gone or whatever, right? So, you know, it's definitely a big decision, and it's some big shoes to fill. You know, I want to get back to playing songs that we never got to play live. You know, it's no secret that Bert had some vocal issues when he sang live. He just couldn't sing certain songs. It just happens, right? Sure. Like Lynchpin, our biggest song, we could never play it. I want to be able to find a singer that could sing that song and we could play it live every night. You know what I mean?
At the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be able to give people the hits, the songs that they paid money to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like I said, man, it's like you've got enough experience in this world to make that call, and the potential in that vocal vacancy. Just planting some fucking seeds to develop that. It's going to be really, really fun for the next few years to see how. Where it moves.
Like I said earlier, you know, I was able to find a couple of very talented guys.
Yeah.
For Divine Heresy, right? Who went on to do big things. Some of them went on to do big things and caused big things. So I'm hoping that. I actually know that I've found some other really good talent. Now it's just a fact of getting in a room with these guys, you know, because I do want to, before I make a decision, I want these guys to come down here, spend some time with us, see if I like them, see if we get along, see how they, if they're going to be too nervous on stage or singing in front of us, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. I'm excited. I'm very excited about this. So I can't wait.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's going to be fucking awesome. Monty, obviously, so the band, you're out of the band, Divine Heresy is going on, but Monty's still got his hooks in you, in a way, because he's asked you to captain the Roadrunner United project.
Before that, the minute I was out of Fear Factory, Monty's like, I want to pay you to do a demo, and I want you to find a band, find a singer, and I want you to do some more commercial stuff, because I know you can do that. So I wrote these handful of songs, got this singer, and it sounded great. But Monty, you know, paid us money to do all that stuff. I mean, Roadrunner was pretty much supporting me. You know what I mean? Yeah. They were supporting me basically in all this stuff.
That's fucking right. I never knew this. That's
so crazy. I wrote all these songs, but then I was like, Monty, I can't put this out. This is very commercial. And I just came off fucking Fear Factory. I got to write some heavy shit again. Right? Which is when I started Divine Heresy. Yeah. Or the beginning of Divine Heresy, right? So then Monty's like, okay, I see your thing, but I got this other idea. I am doing this thing called Roadrunner All-Stars, and I want you to be a team captain, but I also want you to take that song that you wrote for me, the commercial rock band you were trying to start for me, that song that you did there,
Okay.
if you bring that song into this, I will make it the single, and I will get Matt Heafy, the new young guy on the block, to sing that track, and I'll make it the first video and the first single. And I'm like, fuck, what a deal.
Awesome.
So I took it, picked my team, recorded the songs, and the song was The End. Yeah. A song called The End, which is I think it's the only video, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
It's the only videos. It was the only commercially song, right? And it was cool. It was really good. Monty kept his promise, and he loved the track. He loved that track when I wrote it before.
What was your initial reaction to the project itself? Because it's a bit of a bold move, isn't it? We're going to celebrate the history of the label by basically trying to bring do a tribute album to ourselves, effectively.
I honestly think that it was Monty, Connor, and our ex-manager that was married to Colin that I had a falling out with. Well, we had become friends after that. But she also helped Monty Connor too. Her name was Laura Porter. And she helped Monty organize all that stuff. It's
quite an undertaking. And I think
we were kind of like, I was kind of like the first guinea pig, right? The first guinea pig of it. It was before anybody else started working on it. I was already jamming with Roy Mayorga, writing songs. Yeah. You know, we had Daz on a track, we had Kamira, Mark Hunter, we had, Paul Gray was here in LA, fucking writing some stuff with us. Andreas Kisser was here. And it was great. We had like our own little team, our own little band going on. And it was a good thing that we actually filmed some stuff ourselves because we were kind of the first guinea pigs. So by the time Monty was like, okay, we picked the other 4 captains. Let's get a film crew out there to film those recordings.
Yeah.
But we already had finished everything.
Wow.
So we didn't get the film crew coming down and filming us.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Now that you mention it, you are.
So
you're in the concert one a lot because you and Andreas pretty much hold the whole fucking thing together.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is that we were filming stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh shit, now we better document this. Yeah. Because Monty at the time, they didn't really know the whole plan yet. We were just kind of like, I was like, oh, you're going to write songs? Okay, boom. I pick my guys. Boom, 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 boom. I worked really fast and we got things done, right? Before they came up with the idea, hey, let's get a film crew and film everybody else in the studio. We were like, kind of like went too fast and kind of got left behind when it came to that. But like I said, we filmed stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
So we had that footage, right? And, but when it came down to making the live show, right, and putting the band together that way, it was me, Andreas, that was really picking everything. Yeah. Me, Andreas, and Joey Jordanson. We were like me, Andreas, Joey Jordanson, Paul Gray, and Adam Deuce were kind of like the team in LA, right?
Kind of like the house band, and then everything.
The house band, exactly.
Around that, yeah.
The house band, exactly. But if you want to narrow it down, it was pretty much me and Andreas.
Yeah.
Okay, you play these 18 songs, and then you do these 18 songs, and then you know what? I don't want to do that song. I don't want to. You do it, and then Andreas would be like, okay, I got 19 songs or whatever, and then it just kind of grew from there, and we added more songs. I think at one point I had 19 songs, and Andreas did 21 songs or something like that. It was something ridiculous like that. And but we were the house band, me, Joey, Andreas Kisser, and Adam Deuce, and it was Paul Gray as well. Yeah. So we were kind of like the house band, and everybody was kind of switching guitars and switching all kinds of stuff. And I had a blast doing it. We took about a month for rehearsals. So while we were rehearsing, different people would come in and rehearse their songs. Right?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And while we were doing that, they also brought in a film crew to document like interviews and us talking about what was going on, kind of like a reality TV show, you know. Drama happens, and then one person's talking about it. Some more drama happens, and this person talks. You know what I mean? That's kind of like how we had it too. Well, or me and Andreas would do different interviews or interviews together. You know, I'm doing this, and Andreas is doing that. And, you know, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that, and they film it and stuff. And it was really cool. It was a really cool process. It was really cool to see how it all was put together. They, the Roadrunner hired this one guy. I don't remember his name, but he was like basically the guy that oversaw everything, which is really cool. It was very well scheduled, very well planned and put together. But we definitely went out to go party a lot. We went out and partied after rehearsals during the day. We all went out and let loose and just ravaged Hollywood and had a blast.
Do you have any favorite stories from the night of the gig, apart from Brian Frere throwing up everywhere?
Well, the Roadrunner made a mistake, and they had open bar for everybody backstage, you know, for the whole Roadrunner United crew. There was open bar. So some people were getting wasted before the show. Shit. Which made for a fun night.
All right, last one, dude, and then I'll let you go. Reflecting on the time with Roadrunner, would you have done anything differently? Knowing that you're now where you are now.
The only thing that I would have ever liked to change would probably just the 360 deal.
Mm-hmm. The bane of every musician's existence.
Just better percentage.
Yeah.
Just a better percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Loved Roadrunner. Loved everybody that worked there. They did a lot for us. And we really enjoyed being on the label. At that time, being on the label was a lot of credit. You know, people looked at you, oh, you're on Roadrunner. People thought Roadrunner was a major label. You know what I mean? But it wasn't until Nickelback came along where things started to change. A lot of their focus was on Nickelback. A lot of bands got dropped at that time. Mm-hmm. But, you know, at that point, I was pretty much already off the label. But I wasn't signed to the label with anything, you know. So, but I still saw a lot of things that went on there. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't have changed anything other than just the fact, just the points on the contract. You know, what our percentages were, because, like I said, you know, even though we had that little taste of going to a bigger label like Interscope, mm-hmm. you know, maybe that wouldn't have been the right place for us. Yeah. You know. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You never know. I used to hear of bands all the time getting signed from independent labels, then going on to a major label and just not cutting it. Mm-hmm. And then boom, you're back to the smaller independent label.
Or whoever was championing them at the major, it just leaves on the Monday and the left high and dry.
Yes, that, or just the band doesn't sell the records that the major label expected. You know, you too.
Yeah.
So, you know, so they get dropped for many different reasons, right? So maybe we wouldn't have been successful on Interscope, right? And maybe they would have dropped us.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, I think it was better that we stayed with Roadrunner. I mean, the other guys in the band could have a different perspective of how they felt about it.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, I know that Bert wrote a song about Roadrunner on the record when he came back on the Archetype record. He wrote a song called "Slave Labor."
Oh no!
And that's like a clause here in California. You know, after so many years, it's considered slave labor, right?
Yeah.
So I know that he wrote a song about it. So it's like they obviously weren't too happy being there, and I had a different relationship. I had a different relationship with the people there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They believed in me, and I believed in them, and it worked out great.
Yeah, totally.
And so when the band was off Roadrunner, when I came back into the band, we actually signed. I think Monty was still at Roadrunner at the time. We did a couple of records on Candlelight Records.
Yep.
Right, but then that folded, that went under. And the cool thing about it is that at that point, Monty started his own imprint, Nuclear Blast. And so he's like, I'd love to sign the band. Let's do it. And so we did. We did Genexus. Mm-hmm. And now we got the new record, Aggression Continuum, coming out. And we licensed the other two records, Mechanized and the Industrialist to Nuclear Blast as well. So
you see that after the 2012 folding, when it all goes under Warner, so many bands go straight from Roadrunner straight to Monty. And Machine Head were
it wasn't like the way you make it sound is like, oh, you left Roadrunner, then boom, you're gonna go with Monty. No, it's like Monty. Well, you got to realize Monty had a really good relationship with these bands. People love the contribution that Monty, because Monty believed in them, right?
Yep.
So in a way, you want to go back to Monty. You know what I mean? Because you got somebody there who's on your side.
Yeah. Totally.
And he understands the artist. So yeah, of course you want to go back to Monty, but it was kind of more a mutual thing. Monty was seeking you as well, following your career. Okay, they're with that label. Okay, they're off the label. I'm going to go get them.
Smells blood.
I'll give him a call. Say, hey, you want to come with me? I'll take care of you. And he does. Yeah,
well, thanks very much, man. You've really sort of opened up a lot of my perspectives about the label, because obviously the entire project to understand how Roadrunner did what it did, because it was a special place. It did things which no other label has done since and never did at that point, especially for metal. So there's a lot of things, a lot of perspectives I need to sort of like reevaluate after hearing your side of it.
Yeah, and it wasn't just necessarily the label doing things; it was the band doing things, and it was them picking the right bands for the label that were able to represent the label. You know what I mean? Bands like Type of Negative, Biohazard, Machine Head, Fear Factory. Come on, Sepultura. Come on.
Yeah,
those bands represented the label. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out because there was a lot of bands. Because you got to think of Geocide. A shit ton of bands. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very special place, a very interesting place. I've got to figure it out for my generation, otherwise we'll be stuck with an oversaturated market. Thanks very much, mate. I'll send this all out and all that shit. Cheers, have a good day.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.